Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Thanks for watching this video. This is my very second video and I know a lot of you are asking, wait, you told me that you're going to be making a video on history and this isn't history. You're right. I am making a big video on a historical matter which might come out this end of this month or in the beginning of the next month, around that time. It's still, the script is nearly ready. I need to just check my sources once before I reveal it and I release it. Um, so essentially, while I was doing some of that research, I was also going online, checking out various things, and I came across this video called "I Suit the School System" by Prince Ia. Now, I have gotten a lot of good reviews about this video from a lot of different people on how it criticizes the education system in the United States. And a lot of people even told me that this reflects the situation in India too, and it's a great way of directly approaching the problem of the education system. And so I thought, why not make a reaction video on it? I am someone who is a lawyer myself. Have worked with U.S. legal system. Along with that, I have, I've obviously, I'm a freshly graduated law student, so I am well aware of the education system in my country as well as college level education and, school level education. And I'm aware of how these things work and, how the problems have been created because of my, recent experiences with them. So I figured, why not make a reaction video on it and, try to digress this video and see if how much of it relates to India and, how much of it is over romanticized because I'm pretty sure most of it is over romanticized. So let's go.
I once said, everybody's a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today on trial we have modern day schooling. Glad you could come. Not only does he make fish climb trees, but also makes them climb down and do a 10-mile run. Tell me, school, are you proud of the things you've done? Turning millions of people into robots, do you find that fun? Do you realize how many kids relate to that fish? Swimming upstream in class, never finding their gifts, thinking they are stupid, believing they are useless? Well, the time has come, no more excuses. I call school to the stand and accuse him of killing creativity, individuality, and being intellectually abusive. He's an ancient institution that has outlived his usage. So, Your Honor, this concludes my opening statement, and if I may present the evidence of my case, I will prove it.
I'm going to pause it right here and tell people, I disagree with the fact that the school system has outlived its usage. At least when it comes to India and at least when it comes to the rest of the world, schools are still necessary, and an uniform education system is still necessary and important. There are reforms that need to be made. It's true, but saying that schools have outlived its usage is incorrect on a lot of levels. But I want to see why he's doing this. I want to see, the arguments he brings in, the logic that he brings in, and let's see how this goes on.
Proceed. Exhibit A. Here's a modern day phone. Recognize it? Here's a phone from 150 years ago. Big difference, right? Stay with me. Here's a car from today. And here's a car from 150 years ago. Big difference, right? Well, get this. Here's a classroom of today. And here's a class we used 150 years ago. Now,
Um, Again, this is something that again the highly romanticized part comes in. Yes, there is a lot of similarity between the classes of today and the classes in the past, but that does not mean that the classes have exactly remained the same for 150 years. There have been a lot of systems that have been changed in the classes. If I make a quote my own, my own school and my own education system, I still remember being taught things like sex education, which is something that 115 years or 50 years ago you would never be taught. We had we had a psychologist who clearly came over and taught us about sex education when we were in our class 11 and 12, which we call high school year. In our high school in class 11 and 12, we were taught sex education as an alternative through a psychologist, something that really wouldn't be happening 150 years ago. Additionally, schools today use a lot of audiovisual cues. You've got AV rooms, you've got projectors, you've got school education systems, and particularly post COVID, you've got a lot of virtual interfaces which schools have partnered with in order to give or in order to teach students better. So this logic that schools and what are now, and schools which were there 150 years ago, there's no difference between them. Unfortunately, it's a fallacy.
Ain't that a shame? In literally more than a century, nothing has changed. Yet you claim to prepare students for the future? But with evidence like that, I must ask, do you prepare students for the future or the past? I did a background check on you and let the record show that you were made to train people to work in factories, which explains why you put students in straight rows, nice and neat, tell them sit still, raise your hand if you want to speak, give them a short break to eat, and for 8 hours a day, tell them what to think. Oh, and make them compete to get an A letter which determines product quality, hence grade A of meat.
So this is something I do agree with. Schools in the past who did not just were not just institutions for pushing people to work in factories, but in reference to India, the schooling system that was there, and that's something that even followed a bit now, was mostly to get people who are English qualified. So in India, this is the where it differentiates from the US. Over there in the US, people were being schooled to to maybe work in factories. Here in India, people were being schooled, at least when it was when modern Western education came into India and replaced the Gurukul system. People were being schooled to work as sort of a translator and a mediator between the British and the native Indians, like Hindus and Muslims, and the ones who made up the population back then of our country. And this middle class Indians, that they would call them, who would be having full time jobs with the British government, schools were created to specifically train them to have certain attributes that the British would find beneficial, right? Attributes like following orders, attributes like professionalism, attributes like on even let's be on a much more specific scale of professionalism. It's loyal professionalism, where you don't care if the company you're working with is committing crimes, as long as it's paying you on time, as long as it's doing right by you. Um, uh, speaking in good English, another aspect of it. So, and obviously the following a set of rules and working under those set of rules, not challenging authority figures, not questioning authority figures' decisions. Despite the fact that you may find them disagreeable, just accepting it. These are things that the British schooling system implemented in India, and the purpose of it was obviously, as anyone can understand, it was to colonize the country, it was to make the country compliant. And it is a fact that in India today, despite several educational reforms that have taken place, that base education system that the British had in this country, it's the same education model that is still followed. We have made changes to the model, as I clearly stated, audiovisuals and all are coming in, but still, that base model that exists, it is still the one that's going in, which is why you see that you still do not have a lot of critical subjects that are required and which people use in their day-to-day life in schools these days. But you have subjects like physics, chemistry, biology, which by the way are important, but these are not subjects that everyone uses, right? So again, this disparity exists, and it's something that needs to be addressed. So yeah, I agree with him when he is going into this direction and saying that schools primarily were created to serve a different purpose, and even today they are geared towards serving that purpose.
I get it. Back then, times were different. We all have a past. I myself am no Gandhi. But today, we don't need to make robot zombies. The world has progressed. And now we need people who think creatively, innovatively, critically, independently, with the ability to connect. See, every scientist will tell you that no two brains are the same. And every parent with two or more children will confirm that claim. So please explain why you treat students like cookie cutter frames or snapback hats, giving them this one-size-fits-all crap.
Watch your language.
Sorry, Your Honor, but if a doctor prescribed the exact same medicine to all of his patients, the results will be tragic. So many people would get sick, yet when it comes to school, this is exactly what happens. This educational malpractice, where one teacher stands in front of 20 kids, each one having different strengths, different needs, different gifts, different dreams, and you teach the same thing the same way? That's horrific.
Okay. So a few things to address here, right? So he talks about how different kids have different requirements and different needs, and the school system treats them all the same. So on a bigger level, it is true that on certain things they are treated the same. But my understanding of the school system, at least on what I have seen, is that based on the current curriculum and the curriculum, you if you do have a talent that the school that is somewhat externally available, um, the school system is going to try and accommodate that talent. Yes, you're supposed to get marks, you need to score marks, but the school system is going to try and accommodate that talent, and is trying to grow will try to grow that talent. My talent for debating, again, it came up not in the school system per se, it came up in college, but still the education system allowed for talents like my debating talents, my speaking talents, those things to foster. So yeah, while it's true that on a bigger scale, like when it comes to marks, school systems are judging you based on how much you score. It is also true that if you do have some other talent that you can, that you can utilize, most schools, at least in India today, is going to give you some of the other opportunity in which you can develop that talent, or you can find exposure for that talent. So that's something to keep in mind about. Second thing he talks about is how today everyone wants creativity and people don't really care about uniformism anymore, and that's true. Matter of fact, and I can talk to you about my field, law. It doesn't. No one really cares how much marks you get. No one really cares how much marks you get. I have sat down for so many different interviews with so many different companies, and no one even once asked me how much I got for graduation. What they asked me was, what work experience do I have? Have I worked in separate companies? Have I worked in particular legal matters? Have I handled particular type of cases? Have I handled particular type of documentations? Right? That's what they ask. That's what they go for. They don't ask for your, for your marks. They don't ask for, what grade you get. Justify me why you got that grade. At least most established companies don't. Most established companies don't go into that. And much more than that, in the legal field, at least based on my experience, work experience, the amount of networking you do, the amount of the way you connect with people over LinkedIn or real life, that has way more of an impact over securing you your future, rather than getting you a job, right? So this is something I've seen this, right, and I have experienced it. And so he's right when he says this. Today, much more thing is which is being preferred is creativity. But having said that, regardless of how creative you are, there is a certain amount of percentage that you have to get when you are in your school in order to even qualify to go into college, right? If you don't have around, let's say, 60 to 65% in your school, there's hardly going to be any college that's going to take you in, right? And I'm not mean 60-65%. As of right now, you should be getting at least 65-70% in your boards, right? 10 and 12 in India, for for any chance at any other, at any college or any further education. If you have any other talents and you think you can specialize with that talent, you need to give that talent an opportunity, and for that you need to go to college. And every college is going to have that basic requirement that even a private college is going to at least take you required 70% for going in. And if you join a private college, it's going to take a lot of money, right? So keep that in mind when when you're taking all of this down, that these things exist. And yeah, let's continue with the video.
Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant should not be acquitted. This may be one of the worst criminal offenses ever to be committed. And let's mention the way you treat your employees.
Objection. Overruled. I want to hear this.
It's a shame. I mean, teachers have the most important job on the planet, yet they're underpaid? No wonder so many students are short-changed. Let's be honest. Teachers should earn just as much as doctors, because a doctor can do heart surgery and save the life of a kid, but a great teacher can reach the heart of that kid and allow him to truly live. See, teachers are heroes that often get blamed, but they're not the problem. They work in a system without many options or rights. Curriculums are created by
Okay, the thing about teachers is absolutely justified and right. Even in India, teachers are forced to do tuitions if they want to have a sustainable income. I am aware of so many amazing teachers, and I feel a personal touch with this because if it hadn't been for those teachers, you probably wouldn't be seeing me here today with whatever achievements and accomplishments I've done. It's all because of my teachers and the work that they have done that I'm here today. And what I have seen about those teachers when they spoke to me as well is, a lot of them were also having regular jobs as teachers in some other school, but they had to, along with doing that school, they most of them had to do a tuition, like 4 5 tuitions or 6 7 tuitions, in order to supplement that, that supplement their income and get a decent salary. uh, it's a serious issue. The issue of income for teachers is a serious issue, and this is, on the other hand, increasing the problem on multiple aspects. Because here's the thing, right? If you do not pay teachers relevant amount of funds, you do not create rules that prevent teachers from taking tuitions for those very students who are studying in that very school or college, right? What's going to happen is that those teachers are going to come to school or college for the sake of some show. They're going to give a few notes, they're going to talk a few things, and then they're going to go back. They're going to request everyone to join their tuition center, pay extra money in their tuition center, and then learn in detail and learn for real the actual subject matter which they should have been teaching in the school and colleges in the first place. But they don't do that, because if they do, then they're going to lose out on this extra salary and extra income that they're getting, which is helping them live a basic standard of life. I'm not saying all school teachers are, in India, are living below the poverty line, or in a situation where if they don't do tuitions, they're gonna live a very very pathetic lifestyle. But most teachers are in such a situation where their basic income is not sufficient for them to, to carry on a proper existence, at least with the current economy and the current financial situation at play. So they have to supplement it with alternative courses of action. Now, I just don't know this because, my teachers spoke to me and I've seen them. I also have relatives in my family who are teachers, and I've seen them, do things like this, go into other online courses and, teach other online courses in addition to the schools, because, that's the only way they can supplement their income to something that's respectable and decent, and that can help them support themselves and the basic lifestyle they live. So this is a very important fact. However, you cannot, at the same time, when you're doing this, you cannot go so far as to say that, pay teachers as much as doctors. For the simple reason that in order to become a teacher, you don't really pay or spend the amount of time and money that it takes to become a doctor. I understand where the emotional logic is coming from, that doctor saves a patient's life, but a teacher, builds that kid's career up. But that is the exact reason why you've got comparatively lesser number of doctors to the number of teachers, and you need more teachers because everyone does not get sick at the exact same time. But 90% of the population is going to require education, and in India at least it's free education for all. So everyone at least is going to get education till, let's say, class 12, until unless they are in some remote corner of the country. So so it is just not rational or justifiable or in any way possible for anyone to pay teachers the same rate as doctors, because if that happens, then you won't be able to afford education. Like, most people won't be able to afford education. I think that's a common sense. But yeah, like, the remuneration for teachers do need to be properly revised, and a system needs to be put in place for proper doling out of that remuneration. Coming to what he's talking about the fact that the teachers are victims of the system, I cannot agree more than this. That and more than that, and I can't stress how much this fact is true. Most people today who are, administrators, who are involved in this whole education business, they treat this as a business, right? And I have seen so many people. Here's the thing: this is a situation in India itself. Most schools in India itself, they're set up for an ulterior motive rather than education. You've got Catholic schools in which a lot of people think is superior education because they give you English training along with normal schooling. But these schools have an ulterior motive of, of promoting Catholicism, and trying to invoke that spirit of Catholicism into its students. So they have that ulterior motive. Anything and any other school that does not have that kind of ulterior motive has the ulterior motive of money. They're out there to make profits, even though you're not supposed to make a profit, because the school is supposed to be a education system. Education, it's supposed to be a non-profit organization where no family members can have administrative posts. But it only takes you a few minutes of research to realize that most schools have, in fact, put in place situations or circumstances by which they find loopholes in the law through which they can put their family members at important posts and essentially turn something that's supposed to be non-profit, that's supposed to be welfare for the society, into a complete profit-making organization and profit-making body. Now, I wouldn't be against this model if it had the utility and the welfare of students in mind, but it does not. Schools know very well that the only thing that gives them reputation, respect, and more business, aka more students, is more marks. So what they do is they select the people who are supposed to get the best scores, and they do their level best to support these particular students into getting the best scores so that they can use that for the purposes of advertising themselves, right? This selective training that every school and even elite schools make the mistake of, this results in neglect for the other students that are not as perfect in getting 90s. And what you have to understand is that not everyone is geared to getting a 90%, not everyone is geared to get a 95%. That does not make anyone less intelligent. That's just how the world is. Not everyone is good at everything. And yeah, like this is the primary issue, right? So because these people who are who are doing this for the sole purpose of business, they don't care about education and about whether they are teaching the right things. They just care that, okay, this is the curriculum that the board has given, my student needs to get so and so marks in that curriculum. They couldn't care less as to whether if getting that marks is going to do any relevance in the future of that kid, right? As I was saying earlier on, right, there is this huge emphasis in India on science, on physics, chemistry, biology, maths. These are subjects that are taught all the way from class 6 to all the way till class 10. And then if you take commerce, then everyone thinks you're second grade citizen. So the second grade student. If everyone, most people over there, most people here think that you're the second grade student. That's the reason you're taking commerce. And once you take commerce, even then you're stuck with maths. You're stuck with you're forced to do deep level maths in most schools. And and here's the thing, right? Most of these things that you learn, right? Most of physics, chemistry, biology. I don't. Speaking of myself, I do not use any of it, right? I couldn't care less if the formula of water is H2 or H3002 because I don't use it. It's not something that I'm using in my day-to-day life. And with most people it's the same thing. We don't use most of the concepts that we are learning from 6 to 12 in subjects like physics, chemistry, biology from day-to-day life. However, taking this example of the school system, right? There is something that we use every single day, irrespective of who you are, irrespective of what your job is, irrespective of what you're doing, and that's something called law. The law of today, right? The laws that are in existence today, common laws that are in existence today, that you are forced to be faced with every single day on the road, right? It's something that should be taught in schools, but it's not. And deepening onto this, right? There are things like how to deal with police officers. There are tactics like how to deal with police officers. There are skills like how to, what to do when you're in a situation where there may be something illegal going on, what to do in a situation where you see some crime commit in front of you, right? If you read the books that they give to students these days and from classes 6 to 12, and some of which have some of those rules, you will immediately realize that the rules that they're giving is going to land these people in trouble because they don't deal with the complicated situation, complicated legal jargonic mess that it is when you're faced with such a situation. So that's the reason what parents do is they take the easy way out and they tell their kids that, forget what you're learning in school. Whenever you're faced with such a situation, simply don't do anything. If someone asks, tell them you didn't see anything. Just stay away from it, right? And so we create a culture from this that we create a culture essentially wherein we don't assist law enforcement, we don't assist the legal process, and we essentially become a part in the whole reason why there is a delay to all sorts of justice or to healthcare or to in accidents or in any sort of situation where maybe our assistance would have speeded up the process. So these are things that need to be inculcated in students because these are things that people are going to face with on their day-to-day life. But no school does that. I have not yet heard of a single school that puts a huge emphasis on this, right? On the other hand of the story, we put emphasis on something like physics and chemistry, which, to be honest, how many of us are using it? You may have people who are working with it on a daily basis. One of my relatives, for example, he is studying astronomy. He plans to study astronomy and he's doing his masters, and yeah, he's using it. So great for him. You should learn it. But I'm not using it, right? I'm not using it any day in my day-to-day life. I'm on the other hand using concepts which were never taught to me in law school, right? Or which were not taught to me, sorry, in my school. Right? And I was forced to learn them and I was forced to mug big chunks of them in my law school. If on the other hand, there was a system by which I could have learned at least some part of it when I was in school, Who knows, maybe my circumstances in law school might have been better. I might be able to have a better understanding of the law. I might have been able to go in much more depth with the law when college came along. And the same principle applies to other professions and other degrees. So this is definitely true what he's going with.
By policymakers, most of which have never taught a day in their life. Just obsessed with standardized tests. They think bubbling in a multiple choice question will determine success. That's outlandish. In fact, these tests are too crude to be used and should be abandoned, but don't take my word for it. Take Frederick J. Kelly, the man who invented standardized testing, who said, and I quote, "These tests are too crude to be used and should be abandoned." Ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. So he's saying that tests are crude and should be abandoned. Here's the thing, right? So if tests are crude and should be abandoned, the biggest question that anyone is going to ask, and playing the devil's advocate here and also being a bit of a realist, how are you going to judge someone, right? If two people who are in school come to you and and you need to pick some one of them to be in your college, right? And marks and tests are completely gone. How are you going to judge who to pick? Okay. And in case you're going to do the whole job interview thing that we go through in order to get a job, if you're going to do that, that is going to increase the amount of money and cost that is spent in admissions for colleges, which is again going to be reflected into people's wallets, right? And yeah, so that creates this whole different problem. And much more than that, right? How are you going to judge success in school? How are you going to judge that, okay, this person is more successful than that person? Because while I understand where he's coming from and he's saying that everyone is intelligent and successful, it's true, but you also need to grade people. You also need to put people in different categorizations based on how good they are or how bad they are. This, while in a college system you can do that based on how great a job they have done, what is the feedback or recommendation they've got from the internships, which can help you put wherein you can put in an alternative system where either you get good recommendations from internships, and that gives you a better score and better ranking and makes you eligible for things like placements, or you get good marks and that makes you eligible for placements. You can do something like that in college, but what do you do in school? How are you going to grade, or how are you going to classify between students, right? Because the fact is, the reason all of this is currently in place in most countries around the world is because most countries simply cannot afford to give quality education across to every single kid. That's a sad reality. We don't have the resources and the funds to give proper quality education to every single kid, and that's the reason you've got this hierarchical system in place which tries to select kids to give that education to, give the best education to, so that the best deserving kid gets the best deserved education. Now, I agree with you if you feel that these tests are crude. Okay, fine, these tests are crude, but I really want to see what solution he gives and what suggestions he gives that's gonna replace these tests. I want to see where he goes with this.
Of the jury. If we continue down this road, the results will be lethal. I don't have much faith in school, but I do have faith in people. And if we can customize healthcare, cars, and Facebook pages, then it is our duty to do the same for education, to upgrade it, change it, do away with school spirit, because that's useless.
Healthcare, car, medical insurance, and Facebook. Okay, few things. Uh, you can't compare these systems with the school. Okay, for the bigger reason, healthcare, right? In most countries around the world, including what I feel is in United States, healthcare for the most part is funded by you as an individual. You are responsible for your health. You're supposed to get a medical insurance and you're supposed for your healthcare. Now in India you've got government hospitals which do give you healthcare, but again, in most of those hospitals the healthcare is the most basic, right? And while there are other hospitals that give you the most advanced level of healthcare possible in a government hospital, these particular hospitals are always overcrowded, right? So when it comes to advanced healthcare, it is always much more safe, at least in India and most countries around the world, to have some level of insurance that's going to cover for your healthcare. Except for if you're living in those very small few countries around the world where you've got national health insurance by the state that automatically covers for everything. Unfortunately, not every country is rich enough to afford something like that or afford a policy like that. So yeah, healthcare goes into that. Then comes cars, where you get customized cars, and the same logic goes. It's a luxury item that everyone pays a lot of money for, and so you can customize it because so many people are paying so much money for it. Compared to that, think about how much money someone actually pays for their school education, right? In India, I would be surprised if someone paid more than, let's say, the current situation, right? Someone paid a huge amount more than an average of, let's say, 7,000 to 8,000 rupees a month for their education. Right, and even 7,000 to 8,000, based on my estimate, is something that's charged only in the upper echelon schools, in the elite schools. In Delhi and Bombay, you may find some business schools or some high level schools that charge more, but most day schools, most elite level day schools, they charge a maximum of 7,000 rupees to 8,000 rupees a month in the current inflation system, right? That is very low. That's a very, very low amount of money when you consider the amount of expenses that goes into running a school, right? Think about the amount of money you actually pay for your medical insurance, right? Think about the amount of money that you actually pay for medical insurance coverage. Think about the amount of money that you pay for buying a car. The amount of money that you spend in school education is way less than that. Okay. And that the reason it's way less than that is because economies of scale apply, and because it's a standardized institution, one system applies to everyone else, and so that economy of scale applies, and accordingly you are paid a lesser amount of money. Now, if a system is put in place for every individual person, right? If one school sets in place individual circumstances and situations for every single student, you have to now fund that individual teacher, that individual system, that individual course, that individual curriculum, right? Every single person has to do that. There is no more economies of scale. It's become individualized. The payment, that the burden of payment that is on the parents, just bounds to an unimaginable levels, right? And that is simply not doable. That's simply not doable. While people may think that out of the spirit of people we can maybe try figuring a solution out, as of right now, creating individualized personalized solution for every single student in one school, it's not possible. Now, what you can do, right? What is possible is you can have multiple types of schools, right? You can have multiple types of schools, something for the specially abled, something for the for kids with high academic qualifications, something for kids with high sports qualifications. Now, you can do that, but in order to do that, the very first thing you need to change is people, right? You have to change people's perception, because if you don't change people's perception, those schools are simply going to run out of business. If people still perceive schools which are giving academic education to be superior to all other types of schools, they're simply not going to send their kids over to any of the other kind of schools. As a matter of fact, there are schools for specially able that exist in India, but again, most of them are running low on business. As a result, they're because people think that if they send their kids to over there, that means they're admitting that their kid is not normal, and they're saying that their kid is disadvantaged, and they're buying in, and they are buying into all the shame that goes into our society. That is, there's a part of our society that goes to parents of disadvantaged kids, especially abled kids, and much more. They are opening up their kid to harassment and bullying by other members who consider themselves to be regular members of society. So before you even go and venture into this, that you need to have alternative schools or individual options for individual kids, the very first thing you need to change is societal perception of those individual options, or societal perception of those individual kinds of schools. And when you change those perceptions, only then can you even think about creating those schools to work in the first place. Right. Let's continue. Let's see what he says next.
Unless we're working to bring the spirit out of each and every student, that should be our task. No more Common Core. Instead, let's reach the core of every heart in every class. Sure, math is important, but no more than art or dance. Let's give every gift an equal chance. I know this sounds like a dream, but countries like Finland are doing impressive.
Okay. So he's saying that essentially we need to give art, dance equal chances, and I believe in that. That, yeah, you should do that. And there are schools today, at least in Calcutta and in West Bengal, that I've seen that have curriculum for arts and dance. At least in here they have it. But again, people's perception of such degrees is very, very low. And the reason for that is because the success rate from these institutions is extremely low, right? In order to succeed in art or dance, the level of, let's say, dedication you're going to require is 10 times as higher as you require for going into academic institutions. And the reason for that is because the amount of opportunities is lower, right? The amount of jobs you get in art or dance is lower. Math, on the other hand, is something which, again, like, what a more rational approach that he could have gone for, I think, is he could have said that we need to, is that we need to figure out ways of coming up with things that are more pertinent in society, include that in the already existing education system, and take out those that are non-relevant. If he said something like that, I would be absolutely for it. But he's saying he wants to revamp the entire system and start giving art and dance an equal opportunity, which is simply stupid because regardless of how much, like, the standard for you to succeed in art and dance is extremely high. Okay, the probability of success is extremely low because of the amount of competition that is there, because the amount of finesse that's there, and the this slow amount of opportunities that is there. There's very very less opportunities in art and dance compared to uh, you know um, opportunities in academic qualifications. And I know about this because, again, I have relatives who are who are in the art field, and I've seen the way they've had to struggle to get to a position of some level of decency. So yeah, like, that kind of a struggle is not something that I had to go through, or most people who go into the academic line have to go through. So, and that is the reason why parents and elders, they don't really want to ever put their kids into art and dance, irrespective of how much finesse their kid shows. Yeah, sure, as a hobby, as a secondary course of action, sure, why not? But as something that becomes a primary income source, they will think three times before even thinking about putting their kids there. If their kids are absolutely useless with everything else, that's when they're going to put their kids into something like that. Otherwise, they're always going to object. They're always going to create objections because that's how societal perception is, and that's how the economic situation is. Having said that, he now brings about current situation about countries like Finland. Now, again, point to note: what applies for Finland is not going to apply for every other place, right? Finland might the reason Finland's education system works is, first of all, it's a rich country. Okay, they have the resources to invest in their education system, which most countries do not. India included, we do not, despite the huge GDP that we have, we also have a huge amount of expenditure that goes into various welfare programs. It is, I think, it is near impossible to inculcate a system that is there like Finland in India, right? Wherein you've got shorter school days, because what you have to realize is, in India, school is not just a place for learning. It's also a babysitting center for everyone, for classes, for kids. Essentially, it's a babysitting center where they're going to spend 6 hours of their time. So shorter work days is not going to be something that any parent is going to favor, because then they're going to be like, they come back home and before then the kid is already there and he's being alone for so long. Parents won't really be preferring that. They would be preferring a longer work day so that their kids come home by the time, and there's not really much of a time difference between them coming home and their kids coming home, right? So that's the reason for most countries it doesn't work. And secondly, for Finland and the educational modernization that Finland and a lot of Scandinavian and European countries do, it does not apply to most countries because most countries simply do not have the resources to pull it off. Now, when since he's talking about the United States, a case can be made for the US wherein they can say that, yeah, like, sure, India may not have it, but in the United States we don't really have a huge population. In the United States we are spending close to more than what the next five countries spend in defense. So we can maybe reallocate resources and then we can maybe push forward and a proper improved school system. But again, you know that's going to require a lot of thinking on the part of US policymakers and US decision makers and taxpayers. Because based on what I understand of US politics and what I understand of the way US works, is even the work that it does abroad, wherein it sells weapons abroad, wherein it fights wars abroad, all of this also contributes to the US's economy. It's something that, it's a topic on its own, and someday I'm gonna cover it. But US's economy is also, impacted with the wars it fights. It's impacted with the weight, with the weapons it buys, the weapons it sells. And that's the reason, guns and weapons is such a sensitive topic in the US. But coming back on point, uh, the circumstances and situation in Finland is completely separate to the circumstances and situation in most parts of the world, including the United States. And using Finland as an example is completely irrelevant unless you state and explain how exactly the situation in Finland and the situation in the US is similar, right? Unless you put that comparison in place, this entire statement falls on the logic.
Of things. They have shorter school days. Teachers make a decent wage. Homework is non-existent and they focus on collaboration instead of competition. But here's the kicker, boys and girls. Their educational system outperforms every other country in the world.
So again, education system outperforms every other country in the world. So that again is a caveat, because so I think this was another such Scandinavian country. I think it was Norway, but there was a case that came up where people in Norway, where the child protection services in Norway essentially came and took away a kid of an Indian family because they got reports that the child was being fed by hand, and they considered that as force feeding, which is essentially a basic culture of our Indian society. We feed people with hand, we even eat with our hands. For those people who did not know, so I'm kind of skeptical on when they say that it outperforms every education system in the world as to what metric is judging it on. Because yeah, same thing. If I talk about India, like, it's generally considered that Indians outperform most places in the world when it comes to education, because most places around the world, even in the US, have CEOs or top executives that are from India, right? So if he's saying that they outperform education systems around the world, I want to understand what ground he's saying, what stats he's using, and what justification he's going for. But yeah, like, even if I take that thing for granted, as I told you, Finland's circumstances and situations do not reflect the circumstances and situations and budgets of other countries around the world. And same thing with Singapore, rich country, less population, autonomous regime, to be honest. And as a result, because of that, they have much more control over the education system, about every other policy. They don't really care about dissent, care about whether what people's feelings are. So their reality is not the same as the reality of every other country.
Other places like Singapore are succeeding rapidly. Schools like Montessori, programs like Khan Academy, there is no single solution. But let's get moving, because while students may be 20% of our population, they are 100% of our future. So let's attend to their dreams, and there's no telling what we can achieve. This is a world in which I believe, a world where fish are no longer forced to climb trees. I rest my case.
Uh, so yeah, I think the video ends here. So let's talk in detail about a few things that I wanted to talk about before I complete this video. So a lot to digress there, and I think I gave a very detailed going into the video. So I'll just give a small short note on my understanding of how this relates to India, and I'll give a just on how you can make these changes in your country as well. So the thing about India is, what I feel is that we don't really need in India. We don't really need a complete overhaul of the system. The system that is there works, and the system that's there can work. What we need is a proper research, analytical understanding of what a kid requires when he leaves school, and an inclusion of those things in their syllabus, right? So according to me, what a kid requires that is not covered these days is a law, is a understanding of law. Because irrespective of who you are, what your gender is, what your color is, what your race is, what your religion is, you could have n number of differences between you and another person, but law is something that's always going to apply to you. right? You're always working in the confines of the law, irrespective of what profession you're into. So you should always have some basic understanding of the law, not law that is they're told to you by people at Republic TV and Aaj Tak, which is people yelling nonsense things at your face. But what the law actually states, what it's there for, what it actually means, what the objective of it is, and why it is there. There should be some level of basic understanding taught to kids, at least in the school and high school level, before they go into the world as adults. Because we expect kids to vote at the age of 18, but we don't teach them the basic things that they need to vote. We don't teach them the law. We don't teach them what's wrong with society. We just, expect them to vote and expect them to vote for the right candidate without understanding society, without understanding its rules, without understanding its laws. No wonder we are getting people and we're getting useless candidates getting elected to power who are doing nothing more than making the situation worse. Right. So according to me, law needs to be something that needs to be added in. The second thing that I think needs to be added in and needs to be seriously considered is the history syllabus. Now, the problem that I have with the history syllabus is the infinite number of revisions that they have done with regard to history syllabuses. And it's not something that's happened recently. Don't mistake this that that I'm trying to say that only the revision that they did recently in 2020 is wrong. That is wrong. But along with that revision, there have been multiple revisions even in the past with other governments have done, right? And this has resulted, right, in most kids learning about a censored view of Indian history that does not cover most aspects. I was in a conversation with a kid once, and I asked him about Mughals. Sorry, not Mughals, about the Mongols, and I asked him about, hey, do you know why Mongols did not invade India? And this was, and his answer was, no, no, wait. Mongols invaded India, right. Mongols invaded India, but it was invaded. They invaded through Babur. When Babur invaded India, the Mongols invaded India. This is the understanding of history that these people have. For those people who do not know, the Mongols did not invade India because of someone who is one of the most controversial figures in today's news, a person called Alauddin Khilji, essentially, who fought around 3 wars, 3 to 6 wars with the Mongols. I'm not sure on the exact number, but he fought something around 3 to 6 wars with the Mongols, and he won. He was never defeated. He always won. And the last time the Mongols invaded, they invaded with an entire, army of settlers. They planned on invading the country. They planned on, settling in the country. And Alauddin Khilji, if you don't know, he essentially was a ruler of the Delhi Sultanate, and he defeated them. Right? He defeated them. He took the Mongols as slaves. One of the first, I think, recorded situations in history where you've got someone who is a Mongol who is being, essentially enslaved, because it was always the Mongols coming and enslaving other civilizations, enslaving other communities. And people don't understand the relevance of this. As people may say that, okay, why should we even care? You should care because everywhere else that the Mongols invaded, they destroyed that entire culture. They destroyed every single thing related to that culture. There are entire communities in Europe right now that cannot connect with their previous culture, that have lost huge artifacts of immense worth when the Mongols invaded and destroyed those artifacts, destroyed those cultural resemblances, destroyed those heritage structures. Because that's how the Mongols worked in those days. But India luckily did not have to go through that because we had Alauddin Khilji and the Delhi Sultanate that defeated them. Not saying that Alauddin Khilji is a god or a saint and needs to be worshipped or something, but I'm just saying that this just brings into light a fresh perspective into Indian historical story. And the more history is taught that way, history is taught in a grey way, with people from both sides being shown, with all sides, despite religion, despite of ethnicity, despite culture, caste, whatever, being shown in both good and negative light. In which history is presented as facts. When history is presented like that, people's understanding of society improves. People no longer have that weird justification in their brains for a black and white society. They understand that society is grey. They try to solve problems in a logical way. They do not get aggressive very fast. They do not take up arms very fast. They understand that society is grey. They understand that there is a repercussion to every action they take. There is a negative action for every positive action that's taken. And so they think, they strategize, they plan a lot of their action, and then they non-violently protest, and non-violently protest in a manner which through which they can get their mechanism resolved. Not just non-violent protests, they then understand how they can utilize governmental institutions and governmental bodies better to to make their voices heard to the government and get their problems remedied by the government. So again, these are all these this all comes from a knowledge and understanding of history and a knowledge and understanding of law. And I think at least in a base level, okay, I understand that you can't do that for a very depth level, but at least on a base level, the message that needs to go across when we are teaching history is a gray message, a message that irrespective of your gender, race, culture, caste, color, whatever, right, religion, there are good and bad stories on all sides. And the story we need to learn is that ultimately everyone is a human being, and thus everyone needs to be judged for their own actions and not the actions of supposedly someone else. And a community should not be labeled based on the actions of just one member or two members from it. And that's, I think, what I feel is a massive change that needs to happen in our society, and what I feel is something that needs to be affected into our society at the earliest. So with that, I'd like to close off the video for today. I'll see if if you guys like this reaction video and you guys have a positive impact towards it. Please let me know your opinions and thoughts on it. I'll see if I can get some more good reaction videos to react to. Then I can push out more content, because this one requires a bit less of a historical research before I speak on it. But yeah, with regard to the content that I'm mostly involved with, that's the historical content, it's going to take a while to get into. So I'm going to leave you guys here. Hope you have an amazing day, and sayonara.